Lab 6.4, Boyce Codd Normal Form. In this lab, we're going to take a table here, a relation that is in first normal form, and we will decompose it into first we're going to decompose it into second normal, then third normal, then Boyce Codd normal form. So uh, in the end, we end up creating four tables. One table is going to be named course, one is going to be named professor, one is going to be named student course, and the other one is going to be named professor course. And it'll be clear as we decompose these, or after we're done decomposing them, which label goes with which table. So first of all, we see that it's a table of grades, and for each student, for each term, a student will take a course and will receive a grade for it. And the student the student can take the student can take more than one course. And there's also a professor ID and a professor name associated with that course. And so as we go through the business rules here, we'll see the kinds of restrictions that we end up having to impose, and that's going to affect the structure of the tables. So first of all, let's do this second normal form, and that is to remove all non-key columns that do not depend on the whole primary key. Okay, I've made a table. I've used Google Sheets here, and I've made some tables. And so here, this is the table that we're starting with. It's got the key column. The primary key is these first four columns, and that determines, the number of credits, the grade, the professor ID, and the professor name. Okay, so it turns out that if you look at this carefully, you'll see that the number of credits that is determined just by the course. It's determined by the course. The course is determined by the department name and the course number. There's the course numbers in each department are unique, and so so Math 101, for example, defines a course, and the number of credits that's assigned to Math 101. All Math 101 courses have 4 credits. They don't all have the same professor, and so on. Number of credits depends only on these two fields. Okay, not these two fields. So we can pull the number of credits out. We can pull those out and make a separate table that just has what credits depend on. The credits just depend on the course department and the course number. So we can remove this column from the table and create another table which looks like this. And we don't need the duplicates. We shouldn't have the duplicates. So here you notice when we just pull this column out, we end up with 4 duplicates because we already have Math 101 as 4 credits. We had that up here. We already had Biology 98 as 2 credits here, and Art 232 is 3 credits, and we had the 3 people took that course, and so we only needed once. So once we have removed, once we've taken this single table here and split it up into 2 tables, we end up with these 2 tables. We end up with a course table that has just got 3 columns in it, just has 3 rows in it also, and this takes care of all the courses and the number of credits per course. And then here is what's remaining. Okay, so this table is this table. It's this table without the credit column. Okay, so that's this table. All right, so now now it's in second normal form because there's no non-key column that depends only on, or that depends only on part of the uh, the primary key. um, this non-key column depends on the whole primary key, of course, and then this non-key column depends on, well, the student ID plus the course plus the term. The student can take a course, the same course more than once, but they'd have to be in different terms and so on. The professor ID, that's assigned by course. Professor Parker teaches Math 101, and Professor Banner also teaches Math 101. And it's, the terms, they can be different terms of the same terms. So different terms would mean a different professor, could be different professor, different students, and so on. So this column depends on all four, as does this, because this is the same as this. All right, so there's no non-key column that depends on only part of the primary key. The primary key is these four, and these three are the non-key columns. All right, so this is in second normal form. This is the database in second normal form. Okay, so let's see what the next thing is. So that takes care of this. Then third normal form. Remove non-key columns that depend on other non-key columns. Okay, so what are the non-key columns? Let's go to my table here. What are the non-key columns? Let's see. We start out with this. This is what we have. This is the database in second normal form. And let's take a look here, and we see that the professor name depends only on the professor ID. Okay, so these are two non-key columns, but there's a relationship between those two non-key columns, and that is this column depends on this column. So we're supposed to remove that. So I'll create another table, which is the professor table here, and the professor ID will be the primary key, and the professor name will be a non-key column that depends on the primary key. So we're able to remove, by creating this table, we're able to remove this column. Okay, so this table ends up being, when we remove the redundant rows, okay, there's only 3 professors, okay, there's 7 rows, so these 4 are redundant. And so when we remove those, we end up with just this table and this table. So we've removed the professor name. So now our database in whole consists of the course, this course table, and the professor table, and this remaining table. Okay, we're still going to work on this remaining table. Okay, so but this whole thing is in third normal form because we don't have any non-key. Okay, we don't have any non-key columns depending on part of the primary key. Okay, that makes it in second normal form. But then we also don't have any non-key columns that depend on some other non-key. Okay, we took care of that by pulling out the professor ID professor name relation. Okay. So the last thing now that we're supposed to do is we're supposed to remove remaining columns that depend on non-unique columns and restructure the student course primary key. Okay, so student course. All right. So it looks like this is here we go. So this is a little bit more tricky. Okay, so we've got the course table and the professor table, and then we've got this thing. Okay, and turns out that there's a thing where if we look over here. each professor teaches at most one course per term. Okay, so we don't have a professor, it's not like at KCC where you might have a professor teaching more than one course in a particular term. These are professors that will only teach one course in a term. So that means the course can be determined by the professor and the term. You have the professor and you have the term, and that professor can only teach one course. So then we will know what the course is. Okay, so professor ID plus term will determine the course. Okay, so that is so here we have key columns, two columns which happen to be part of the primary key, and they depend on partially a non-key column. Okay, that's not, so it's not in Boyce-Codd normal form, because you have columns that depend on non-unique columns. Okay, you have columns that depend on non-unique columns. This is a non-unique column, and these two columns depend on this column, which is non-unique. It's not part of the primary key. Main columns depend on. This doesn't quite make sense to me. But anyway, so that's the relation. Okay, so there's a relation there, and we have to break that out into a table. Okay, and so what we're doing here is we are looking at it's the relation between this. Actually, it's a relationship between this and this plus this. Oops, I meant plus this here. All right, so we now once we create this table here there's no okay, if we remove student ID, okay, this doesn't have anything to do with the student's ID, right? This only has to do with these three columns and this column. Okay, well, these three columns cannot serve as the primary key if this is the only non-key column, because we would have because let's see, there's three here. Art, these two, okay, these two, Math 101, Math 1, okay, Math 101, okay, so this row and this row, these two, because, okay, we aren't counting this one. Okay, we're only counting, let's say, these columns, but not this column. Okay, so Math 101 Fall 2023 is Professor ID 186, but also Math 101 Fall 2023 is Professor ID 331. Okay, so that doesn't work. These three columns are the primary key for the whole table, but if we remove the grade and we remove the student ID, then it doesn't work. What does work is the professor ID plus the term, because professor ID plus the term gives us Math 101. This professor ID, this different professor with the same term, also gives us Math 101 ID. Okay, so what we will do is we will remove these two columns, and we'll create a new table with professor ID, term, and these two columns over here, professor ID and term, and that's going to determine the course. Okay, these are the courses. Okay, so we take this table we take this column and this column to be the primary key, and we delete these two columns, and we end up with just well, okay, so we pull out the professor ID and the term, and that gives us the course. So these two things determine these two things, and we see that we have let's see, we have redundancies here, right? We've got professor ID and term gives us biology in 98, and the same professor ID and term gives us biology in 98, so we can get rid of this row. This 186 spring 2024 gives us ART 232, and we've got that row again right here, so we can get rid of this row. So that yields this table here. No, that yields this table here. Only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. But also, when we remove these two columns from this table, we still have, they're all still all unique, but the professor ID now will replace the course department and course number, because the course department and course number can be determined by the professor ID and the term. So we have the professor ID and the term. The professor ID and the term determines the course, and then what's left after removing these two columns is simply this table. There's, one record in this table for every record that was in this table, that was in the original table. And that's and so in the end we end up with just this table. After we delete the columns, we end up with this table, which is the student, which ends up being the student course table. This table is the professor course table, and then the professor table and the course table. So the last thing we need to do is to create the create statements for this. And we'll do that by, let's just do that here. I'm going to start by, let's do the, I'm just going to take this here. And I'm going to do one for the, let's do this course table first. It's course department, course number, credit. Oops, so this is just the course table, course department, course number, and credit. And we don't need any of this. The primary key is course department and course number. So this is the primary keys, like this and like this. Okay, so that's course. Let's do professor next. So we have, let's do professor. It's professor ID and professor name. That's all it is. Professor ID, professor name. So let's just copy this again. And this is going to be professor. And so let's take out professor. Let's take all this out. And let's take, and that's it. And let's make the professor ID be the primary key. Okay, so that's the second one. The third one is, what does it say for the third one? It's the student course and professor course. Well, let's see. Let's do professor course. It's professor ID plus term plus department. Okay, so I'm going to do this to make it easier for myself. Let me just copy this again because I'm lazy. And this one's going to be called Professor Course. And it's going to have Professor ID and term. Let's see, it's not going to have student. It's not going to have student. Now these don't have to be in any kind of order here. No, not really. Department, course number, and term, not credit, not grade. Professor ID, but not professor name. And the primary key is Professor ID and term. Okay, so that's Professor Course, and the last thing we're left with is Student Course. Okay, so that would be, let's take this here. Oh, am I supposed to modify Student Course? I guess I'm supposed to modify the Student Course up here. Okay, so that's going to be student ID, term, not credit, grade, definitely grade, and professor ID, but not professor name. And I think student ID, term, and professor ID. Okay. All right. I think that should work. I'm gonna I guess I might as well submit for grading. Gee, I can't. How does it go run it? I'm gonna go if I run it.